The champagne glasses clinked softly in the grand ballroom of the Meridian Club where New York's elite had gathered for the Whitmore Foundation's annual gala. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the quiet hum of privilege. Then, like a blade through silk, Victoria Whitmore's voice sliced through the room. "Excuse me, I don't recall seeing your name on our guest list." All eyes turned to the woman in the sleek black dress, standing her ground, her posture unshaken. Dr. Kesha Williams met Victoria's gaze without flinching, her fingers tightening around her clutch. "Perhaps you should check again," she replied, her voice calm but edged with something sharper. Victoria's mother, Eleanor Whitmore, materialized beside her daughter, her pearls glinting under the chandelier light. "The help should know their place," she murmured, her smile dripping with condescension. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, led by Victoria's brother Jason, who was already filming the encounter for his Snapchat. "Dad's security," he called, grinning. "James Whitmore Sr." His Rolex flashing as he gestured, nodded to the two guards approaching. The family formed a wall of disdain, their expressions a masterclass in quiet cruelty. Kesha glanced at her watch. In 8:47 p.m., right on schedule. "Tell me," she said, her voice carrying now, "have you ever been so underestimated that people couldn't see the revolution standing right in front of them?" The room tensed. The Meridian Club's penthouse was a monument to old money crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and the unspoken rules of who belonged. The taller security guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to see your invitation." Kesha reached into her clutch, the movement deliberate. Around her, the crowd leaned in phones, raised. Someone muttered, "This is gonna go viral," behind a champagne flute. Victoria smirked. "Oh, this should be good." A woman in Gucci glasses angled her phone higher. Her livestream viewer count skyrocketed. Comments flooded in, Karen alert, mixed with uglier remarks. Kesha handed over the invitation cream with gold embossing. The guard studied it, hesitating. "This appears to be legitimate." "Appears?" Eleanor's laugh was like shattered glass. "James Darling, didn't the club update their verification process?" James adjusted his bow tie, his voice booming with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Sometimes invitations get copied." The implication hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Nods of agreement circled the room. Jason's phone buzzed incessantly, 15K views in 4 minutes. "Content gold," he whispered. Kesha's gaze never wavered. "I can verify my invitation's authenticity." "How?" Victoria challenged, arms crossed. "Do you have a board member willing to vouch for you?" The crowd tightened, a jury of pearls and polished shoes. Then, a shift, Dr. Rachel Bennett, a renowned cardiologist, stepped forward. "Victoria, maybe we should, with all due respect, Rachel?" Eleanor cut in. "Standards exist for a reason. The Foundation's reputation depends on them." The coded language was clear. Just as the tension peaked, the elevator dinged open. A man in a tailored suit strode in his presence, silencing the room. "Apologies for my tardiness," he said, his voice smooth. All eyes turned to Michael Carter, the Whitmore Foundation's largest donor. He glanced at Kesha, then at the guards. "Is there a problem? Dr. Williams is my guest." The room froze. Victoria's smile faltered. Jason lowered his phone. Kesha allowed herself a small victorious smile. "Like I said, perhaps you should check again." The tension in the room was so thick you could taste it like expensive champagne gone flat. Guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Kesha and the Whitmores, but no one dared to speak up. Then, a server weaving through the crowd bumped into Kesha's arm, sending her clutch tipping. A business card fluttered to the marble floor. "Jason Whitmore ever." The vulture zoomed in with his phone as the guard scooped it up. "Washington Capital Management." He read aloud, then smirked. Never heard of it. Probably some boutique firm trying to crash the big leagues. Victoria sneered, flipping her hair. But the live stream comments were already exploding. Washington Capital manages 50B dumbass, scrolling too fast for anyone to catch. The second guard cleared his throat. Ma'am, if you could step aside, we'll handle this privately. Privately? Kesha's voice was calm, but something in it made the guard's grip on his radio tighten. James Whitmore Sr. checked his watch, the diamonds on his Patek Philippe glinting. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a major announcement in 14 minutes. The unspoken threat hung in the air. Don't ruin this for us. Eleanor smiled saccharine sweet. We can't have disruptions during such an important moment. Then, a shift. A Bloomberg reporter near the bar glanced at the business card still in the guard's hand. His eyebrows shot up. Kesha caught his reaction, and for the first time, the ghost of a smile touched her lips. I understand, she said, turning back to James. Time is money, especially when billions are on the line. Exactly, James said, nodding like she'd finally grasped the obvious. Victoria gestured toward the service elevators with a flourish. The main elevators are for guests tonight. You understand. It was a dismissal, a final humiliation. Know your place. The live stream hit 20K viewers. Whitmore scandal started trending. But then Kesha's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her posture changed. The quiet confidence that had been simmering now boiled over. Actually, she said, turning on her heel, I think I'll wait for the main elevators. Victoria's voice turned shrill. Excuse me. Kesha didn't blink. I have calls to make while we sort this out. Just then, the ballroom doors swung open. A hush fell as Michael Carter strode in, flanked by two men in suits, one holding a file stamped with the SEC logo. Michael's gaze locked onto James. Funny, he said, voice cutting through the silence. I just got off the phone with the board. They're very interested in why the foundation's largest donor wasn't informed about tonight's real announcement. Eleanor's smile froze. James's face went pale. And Kesha. She finally let herself smile. Like I said, billions are on the line. The room erupted. The air in the Meridian Club had turned electric, every breath charged with the weight of what was unfolding. Kesha held her phone loosely in her hand, the screen still glowing with those 3 missed calls from Meridian Industries Board. The Bloomberg reporter, David Kim, was practically vibrating at his seat, fingers flying across his keyboard as the pieces clicked into place. Ma'am. The guard tried again, voice wavering. We really need to... 13 minutes. Kesha cut in softly, her eyes flicking to her watch. Isn't that what you said, Mr. Whitmore? 13 minutes until your big announcement. James Sr. nodded stiffly, his jaw clenched. Yes, and we can't have any... Perfect. She dialed a number with slow, deliberate precision. That should be just enough time. The phone rang once, twice. Then, hello, Marcus, Kesha said, her voice crisp and clear. Yes, I know you're in the middle of prep, but we need to discuss the Meridian partnership. The reaction was instant. James Sr. went bone white. Jason's phone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the marble. Victoria's champagne glass shattered at her feet, the sound like a gunshot in the silent room. Only Eleanor remained clueless, leaning in to whisper. Who is she talking to? David Kim was already halfway through his article, the headline screaming across his screen. Whitmore Foundation's gala nightmare, Meridian Industries deal in jeopardy. Kesha continued unfazed. I'm afraid there's been a complication with tonight's announcement. The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in abandoned drinks. Yes, Marcus. I understand the contracts were signed last week, she said louder now, but circumstances have changed. James Sr. finally found his voice, stepping forward like a man walking to his own execution. Excuse me, miss, but who exactly are you calling? Kesha held up a single finger. Wait. The sheer authority in the gesture froze him mid-sentence. The Instagram livestream was a frenzy, now 35K viewers' comments flooding in. She said, Meridian OMG. Whitmores are finished. This woman is a whole CEO. Victoria clutched her father's arm, her voice shrill. Daddy, what's Meridian Industries? Should we know that name? Eleanor fluttered her auction paddle like a fan. It sounds familiar. Wasn't that in the board notes? Jason, for once, looked genuinely shaken. Wait, isn't that the company we're announcing the partnership with tonight? David Kim hit publish. The article went live just as the event coordinator's voice crackled through the staff headsets. 10 minutes to the Meridian announcement. James Sr.'s hands trembled as he adjusted his cufflinks. Perhaps we should postpone. Kesha ended the call with a quiet click. No postponement necessary, she said, sliding her phone back into her clutch. Then, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, the deal's off. A collective gasp ripped through the room, and then the final twist. The ballroom doors burst open. In strode Marcus Reynolds himself, CEO of Meridian Industries, flanked by his legal team, his gaze locked onto James. We need to talk, he said, voice like steel. Privately. Kesha didn't move. Oh, I think this conversation should be public. The livestream hit 50K. Somewhere in the back, a server muttered, Damn. The tension in the room had reached its breaking point. The taller security guard pressed his earpiece closer, whispering urgently, Control. We might need the club manager down here immediately. Dr. Elizabeth Carter pushed through the crowd, her medical authority lending weight to her words. Victoria, I really think we should. Elizabeth, please, Catherine interrupted, her voice stripped of its earlier honeyed charm. This is a family matter now. Kesha's lips curled into a knowing smile. Family matter, she repeated, tilting her head slightly. The way she emphasized the words sent an unmistakable message. She wasn't just familiar with their world, she understood it down to its rotten core. Jason's phone buzzed violently in his hand. His Instagram story had been shared over 1,000 times in 5 minutes. TMZ had picked it up. TikTok was exploding. The hashtag Whitmore racist was climbing the trends. Ma'am. The guard tried again, sweat beading on his forehead. We really need to resolve this. Chucky. Resolution. Kesha nodded, as if considering the word for the first time. Yes, that's exactly what we need, Mr. Whitmore. She paused, then dropped the hammer. What would you say your company's annual revenue was last quarter, AA? The question landed like a grenade. James Sr.'s composure cracked. I beg your pardon. Your revenue. Whitmore Industries Q3 2024 approximately $847 million. The precision of the number was unnerving, if memory serves. Victoria's face drained of color. How could you possibly? Public filings, Kesha said smoothly. SEC documents are quite informative. David Kim's fingers froze over his keyboard. He knew those filings. The number was exact down to the last dollar. 9 minutes. The coordinator announced, her voice strained. The crowd had transformed from amused spectators to witnesses of an execution. Champagne flutes sat abandoned on trays. No one dared to drink. I don't understand what you're implying, Catherine said, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. I'm not implying anything, Kesha replied. I'm stating facts, your company's market position, your desperation for strategic partnerships. Every word was a scalpel, dissecting their empire in real time. Jason frantically Googled Washington Capital Management. The search results made his hands shake. $50 billion in assets under management. Top 5 investment firm in North America. He shoved the phone at Victoria, whose knees nearly buckled. 8 minutes. The coordinator called. The event staff exchanged panicked glances. Photographers adjusted their lenses, sensing history in the making. The violinist played on the music, a stark contrast to the unraveling scene. James Sr. attempted one last stand. Young lady, I don't know what game you're playing. Game. Kesha's laugh was light, almost melodic. Mr. Whitmore, I don't play games with business. The word business hit like a bullet. Then the twist no one saw coming. The doors flew open again. In walked Lillian Pierce, the legendary Wall Street Journal investigative reporter, microphone in hand camera, crew in tow. She zeroed in on Kesha. Dr. Williams cared to comment on Washington Capital's hostile takeover of Whitmore Industries' largest debt holdings. The room erupted. James Sr. swayed on his feet. Catherine's pearls clutched in her white-knuckled grip. Victoria looked like she might be sick. Kesha didn't even blink. She simply turned to the Whitmores and said, "Now that's what I call a family matter." The live stream hit 100K. The violinist finally stopped playing. And in that moment, the Whitmore dynasty crumbled in real time. The air in the penthouse had become thick enough to choke on. David Kim's keyboard clicks were the only sound as he pieced together the story the Whitmores were too blind to see. Washington Capital wasn't just an investment firm. It was the guillotine hovering above their empire. The Instagram live counter ticked past 50,000 comments, blurring into an indistinguishable smear of outrage and awe. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice," the security guard muttered, his radio crackling with static. Kesha arched an eyebrow. "My voice." The irony dripped from her words. "Perhaps the acoustics in here are better than you realized." She wasn't wrong. The marble walls carried every syllable like a courtroom stenographer, ensuring no one missed a word. 7 minutes. James Sr.'s forehead glistened under the chandeliers. Catherine's knuckles whitened around her pearls. "James, maybe we should call Richard," she hissed. "Richard Steinberg, their $1 $200 an hour corporate fixer." "Excellent suggestion," Kesha said as if she were approving a lunch order. "You'll want him to review your partnership agreements, particularly the morality clauses." The term landed like a bomb. Victoria's hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Marcus Jr. had gone statue still, his phone screen displaying Kesha's Wikipedia page, Harvard MBA, MIT PhD, Forbes Most Powerful Women, 3 years running. "Oh, God," he breathed. The whisper slithered through the room. Heads turned. Dr. Carter tried again. "Perhaps we should all take a breath and—" 6 minutes. The coordinator's interruption was a death knell. Kesha checked her watch, the same steel timepiece that now looked less like an accessory and more like a weapon. "Time is valuable," she mused, echoing James's earlier words with razor precision. Especially when reputations are evaporating in real time. David Kim's first article went live. Whitmore Foundation Gala erupts in racial firestorm as unseen power player exposes dynasty's weakness. But he was already drafting the follow-up because he knew what the Whitmores didn't. He knew about the leverage. 5 minutes. Then the twist. Kesha's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and for the first time all night, her smile reached her eyes. It was the kind of smile that made hedge fund managers break out in cold sweats. "Ah," she said, holding up the screen for the room to see. A press release from Meridian Industries. The headline blared, "Partnership terminated, effective immediately." James Sr. made a sound like a deflating balloon. But Kesha wasn't done. She tapped her screen once more. A second notification popped up, a Bloomberg alert. Washington Capital acquires 18.7% stake in Whitmore Industries. The gasps were deafening. Victoria swayed. Catherine's pearls snapped, scattering across the floor like tears. And then the final blow. The Meridian Club's massive LED screen, originally meant to display the Whitmore Foundation's announcement, flickered to life. A live CNN feed filled the display. Breaking SEC launches investigation into Whitmore Industries' accounting practices. The room erupted. The coordinator dropped her clipboard. Kesha straightened her sleeve. 4 minutes, she said softly. plenty of time for the vultures to arrive. Outside, the first news helicopters circled overhead. The backstage staff had become statues, their carefully rehearsed routines forgotten. Clipboards dangled from limp fingers as they watched their meticulously planned event unravel in real time. The show couldn't be stopped, not with this many cameras rolling, not with this much blood in the water. Kesha's phone buzzed again, the sound slicing through the tension like a scalpel. She glanced at the screen, and something in her posture shifted, not tension, but resolve. The calm of a chess player about to declare checkmate. "Excuse me for just one moment," she said, as casually as someone pausing a brunch conversation. The phone connected instantly, the kind of immediate response reserved for those who command boardrooms before breakfast. "Marcus, it's Kesha." Her voice rang clear through the penthouse, every syllable bouncing off the marble like a judge's gavel. "I need you to execute the meridian withdrawal immediately." The effect was nuclear. James Sr. staggered back as if struck, his Patek Philippe flashing uselessly against the pillar he barely caught himself on. Victoria clawed at his arm, her French manicure drawing blood through his Brioni suit. "Daddy, what's meridian withdrawal?" Her voice cracked. She already knew. They all knew. This was the sound of generational wealth evaporating. Kesha continued clinical and precise. $1.2 billion. Yes, the entire partnership. Cancel it. Each word landed like a stock market crash. Catherine's pearls seemed to constrict around her neck. Marcus Jr.'s phone hit the floor with a crack that echoed through the silent room. David Kim's fingers blurred across his keyboard. Breaking, unidentified woman cancels Whitmore's billion-dollar deal live at Gala. His screen reflected the chaos, Instagram Live viewers surging past, 100,000 comments screaming, "Iconic," and "Watch the Empire Fall," in a relentless digital tide. Then the twist no one anticipated. The massive LED screen behind the Whitmore family flickered to life. Not their carefully prepared announcement, but a live CNBC feed. Whitmore Industries stock plummets, 37% in after-hours trading. The ticker at the bottom scrolled Washington Capital Management Files. 13D on Whitmore, 18.7% stake acquired. A collective gasp tore through the room. Victoria's knees gave out. James Sr.'s mouth moved soundlessly, like a fish tossed on marble. But Kesha wasn't done. She tapped her phone once more, and the screen changed again, this time to a pre-recorded video of Richard Steinberg, the Whitmore's own attorney, standing beside the Meridian CEO. After careful review, Steinberg read stiffly from a statement. "We recommend terminating all partnerships with Whitmore Industries effective immediately." The betrayal was absolute. From somewhere in the crowd, a champagne flute slipped from numb fingers, shattering on the floor. The sound seemed to wake James Sr. from his stupor. You can't," he rasped. Kesha finally lowered her phone. "It's already done." She adjusted her cuff, revealing the barest glimpse of a Washington Capitol wristband, the same one worn by every Meridian board member. 3 minutes until what should have been your announcement. Shall we see how the markets react?" Outside, the first news helicopters circled like vultures. The Whitmore Foundation Gala had become something else entirely, a public autopsy of privilege. And Kesha Williams stood at the center of it, all the scalpel in her hand, glinting under the chandelier light. The grand ballroom had become a courtroom, and Kesha Washington stood as both judge and executioner. Catherine Whitmore, Manhattan royalty, who had never in her 65 years been rendered speechless, gaped like a suffocating fish, her pearls swinging wildly with each shallow breath. Victoria, ever the socialite, scrambled to salvage what remained of their dignity. "Dr. Washington," she began, her voice slick with desperation, "I'm sure we can work this out. There was clearly a communication breakdown." Kesha arched an eyebrow. "Communication breakdown?" she repeated, letting the phrase hang in the air like the stench of burning money. Interesting way to characterize what just happened. Her gaze swept across the wreckage. 4 generations of Whitmore privilege, crumbling in real time, 2 stunned security guards and a sea of phones, broadcasting their downfall to nearly 100,000 viewers. Let me clarify the communication, she continued, her tone surgical. I arrived with a legitimate invitation and was told I didn't belong. Mrs. Whitmore implied this was an event for people of a certain caliber. She paused, letting the words sink in. Your son joked about charity, suggesting I was the one in need. Your husband called security, and you, Mr. Whitmore, accused me of forging my invitation. The Instagram live feed erupted. Fire emojis and crown symbols flooded the screen. She's eating them alive, one comment screamed. Marcus Jr. stared at his phone, the Forbes article about Kesha glaring back at him. The woman who rebuilt American manufacturing. How Kesha Washington's strategic partnership saved 200,000 jobs. His stomach turned. He just filmed himself mocking a woman who could buy and sell their family twice over. 1 minute to announcement. James Sr. straightened his bow tie with trembling fingers. Dr. Washington, please, he begged, his voice cracking. This will hurt thousands jobs, education programs. Mr. Whitmore. Kesha interrupted, her voice slicing through his plea. Do you know Washington Capital's mission statement? He shook his head, mute. Building sustainable partnerships with organizations committed to equality, innovation, and social responsibility. Each word landed like a guillotine blade. Your family just demonstrated in front of the world how deeply you value equality. Catherine clutched James's arm, her nails digging in. Call the board. Call Richard, she hissed. But James knew it was over. No amount of old money influence could undo this. Not when the world had watched it unfold live. Then the final twist. The event coordinator's voice crackled through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, the Whitmore Foundation's announcement will now be postponed. A beat of silence. Then, from the back of the room, a single pair of hands began to clap. Slowly, deliberately. It was Michael Carter, the Meridian CEO. One by one, others joined, guests, staff, even the security guards. The applause built into a thunderous roar, drowning out the Whitmore's spluttering protests. Kesha didn't smile. She simply turned to leave her heels clicking against the marble like a ticking clock. The Whitmore era had ended. And everyone, even the Instagram livestream, knew it. The event coordinator's voice shattered completely, her headset slipping from her ear as she realized that there would be no triumphant announcement tonight. No flashing cameras capturing the Whitmore family's crowning achievement. Just silence, devastation, collapse. Kesha glanced at her steel watch, the same unassuming timepiece that had ticked quietly through this entire execution. I believe your announcement time has arrived, she said softly. The Whitmores stood frozen in their ruin. Victoria's mascara bled down her cheeks in black streaks. Catherine's pearls might as well have been a noose. Marcus Jr. gripped his shattered phone like it could somehow undo the last 30 minutes. And James, senior patriarch titan of industry, looked like a ghost haunting his own life. But Kesha wasn't done. From her simple black clutch, she withdrew a single sheet of cream-colored paper, the kind of expensive stock reserved for wedding invitations and corporate death sentences. The rustle of unfolding paper echoed through the silent penthouse like the cocking of a gun. There's something else you should know, she said, that terrifying smile returning. Washington Capital doesn't just control the Meridian Partnership. A pause. The entire room stopped breathing. We own 34% of Whitmore Industries itself. The detonation was silent but absolute, the sound of generational wealth evaporating in real time. James Sr.'s fingers twitched toward his bow tie, a lifetime of boardroom instincts, demanding he maintain composure even as his empire burned. Dr. Washington, he croaked, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Privately, Kesha's laugh was ice. Mr. Whitmore, your family just staged a masterclass in public humiliation. I believe transparency is warranted. She fully unfolded the document, the Washington Capitol letterhead gleaming under the chandeliers like a death certificate. SEC Filing 13D1. She read aloud each syllable, precise as a bullet. 18 months of strategic acquisitions, 34.7% of outstanding shares. She tilted the paper toward the nearest camera phone. The math, as they say, is math. Marcus Jr.'s cracked screen reflected his frantic Google search, 34% ownership, Whitmore Industries. That makes her, his voice cracked, largest single shareholder. Victoria's champagne glass finally slipped from her fingers. The crystal shattered against marble, a tiny echo of the larger destruction. Largest shareholder. Kesha confirmed. Then, with deliberate cruelty, though I do appreciate the Whitmore family trust's enthusiastic minority stake at 31.2%. The final twist came from the back of the room. A voice calm, measured, and utterly damning. Actually, it's 34.7 against 28.9. All heads turned. Richard Steinberg, the Whitmore's own attorney, stood with his phone raised. The trust's holdings were diluted this afternoon. I just received the notice. He looked at James, almost apologetic. Margin calls. The LED screen flickered again, CNBC now showing Whitmore Industries stock halted down 89%. Kesha slipped the document back into her clutch. I believe that concludes our business. She turned toward the elevators, the main ones this time, leaving the wreckage behind her. Outside, the news helicopter's spotlights cut through the night like searchlights over a prison yard. The Whitmore Foundation gala would be remembered, just not how they'd planned. Not as a celebration, but as an obituary. The numbers fell from Kesha's lips, like a judge's sentencing. Each percentage point another nail in the Whitmore coffin. James Sr. holds 12.4%, Victoria 4%, Marcus Jr. 8.7%, Catherine 6.3%. I do my research. The Instagram live counter surged past 130,000 comments flooding in like a digital tsunami. She owns them. Racists just got fired by their boss. David Kim's keyboard nearly smoked under his flying fingers. Breaking. Dr. Kesha Washington reveals controlling stake in Whitmore Industries. After viral gala confrontation, hostile takeover imminent. Catherine's pearls clicked like abacus beads under her shaking fingers. That means you could demand board seats, force leadership changes. Yes, Mrs. Whitmore, Kesha said as casually as someone confirming a lunch order. That's exactly what it means. The corporate elite in the room collectively flinched. 34.7% wasn't just influence. It was control. Dr. Carter stepped forward, her physician's eye recognizing shock symptoms. Perhaps we should... Thank you, Dr. Kesha acknowledged with genuine warmth before turning surgical again. But this requires immediate business attention. Her steel watch glinted like a blade. Your $3.2 billion market cap, my $1.1 billion stake, isn't just portfolio diversification. It's a responsibility. James Sr. grasped at straws. Washington Capital's 12% annual returns. Above market, yes, Kesha interrupted. But financials aren't everything. The room froze. ESG compliance, mission-driven investing, social responsibility. Each term hit like a subpoena. Tonight, 127,000 witnesses saw your family's values. They're incompatible with our corporate charter. Victoria lunged forward, desperation cracking her voice. We can fix this. Fix what? Kesha's voice dropped to a whisper that carried farther than any shout. The racism, the humiliation, or just the fact it was recorded. Marcus Jr.'s shattered phone screen reflected his doom, TMZ, CNN, NY post notifications piling up. His content gold had become their execution video. Then the death knell. Emergency board meeting, Monday 9 a.m. Kesha snapped her clutch shut with finality. Bring your resignations. Outside, the Whitmore Industries ticker symbol flashed red on every screen. The stock hadn't just crashed, it had been erased. And in the center of the storm stood Dr. Kesha Washington, the woman who hadn't just crashed their party. She'd ended their dynasty. James Sr.'s face turned the color of spoiled milk as Kesha's words landed like a series of corporate death blows. Emergency board meeting to discuss leadership changes, governance reforms, and mandatory diversity training. Each phrase hit like a wrecking ball to their family legacy, and immediate suspension of all senior management pending investigation into discriminatory practices. Victoria stumbled back as if physically struck. Suspension. But I'm CEO. We're CEO, Kesha corrected gently. As of this moment, your entire executive team is under review. The unspoken truth hung in the air with 34.7% ownership. Her recommendations were tantamount to edicts. Catherine's whisper was barely audible. Dr. Washington, our family built this company over 3 generations. Kesha didn't even glance at her phone. Mrs. Whitmore, your legacy is currently trending under Whitmore Racist with 2.3 million impressions. The internet is writing your epitaph in real time. The security guards shifted uncomfortably. They'd expected to usher out drunk socialites not witness a Fortune 500 coup. James played his last card. 23,000 employees depend on us. You'd risk their jobs over Ace E. This isn't personal. Kesha cut in her voice, diamond hard. It's business. Your Q4 revenue was $847 million. The Meridian deal was $1.2 billion, 142% of your earnings. Without it, she let the implication hang. But those 23,000 workers, they'll be fine. Washington Capital specializes in efficient turnarounds. The subtext was clear. We'll run your company better than you ever did. Victoria lunged forward, manicured hands trembling. The board won't allow this. Kesha's laugh was soft, melodic, and utterly chilling. Victoria, I am the board now. David Kim's final headline flashed across every screen in the room. Whitmore Industries CEO suspended as controlling shareholder declares corporate overhaul. Outside, the Whitmore Tower logo still glowed against the Manhattan skyline, but everyone present knew it was already just a relic. The headlines spread like wildfire through Manhattan's financial district. Whitmore Industries in crisis as largest shareholder demands overhaul after racism scandal. Bloomberg alerts pinged across trading floors. Reuters pushed breaking news notifications. The Wall Street Journal updated its homepage in real time. Marcus Jr. stared at his phone in horror. His now infamous Instagram story had surpassed 500,000 views. 50,000 shares. Comments demanding boycotts, investigations, resignations. His content gold had become their family's obituary. Kesha laid out her terms with the calm precision of a surgeon outlining a procedure. 1. Mandatory diversity training for all executives. 2. $50 million minority business development fund. 3. Complete leadership overhaul. The alternative, she added softly, is a hostile takeover, which given recent events I suspect shareholders would enthusiastically support. The unspoken truth hung in the air. The Whitmore name could be erased from their own company by week's end. James Sr.'s gaze swept across the penthouse. The chandeliers his grandfather commissioned the oil portraits of 3 generations of Whitmore men. A century of empire building unraveled in 45 minutes. What do you want from us? He rasped. Kesha slid the legal document back into her clutch. A partner Washington Capital can be proud of. The words landed like a verdict. As she turned to leave, she paused at the elevator. Oh, and Mr. Whitmore draft, a sincere public apology. The board expects it by Tuesday. Yadi. Monday, 9:03 a.m. The Whitmore Industries boardroom. Once a throne room, now felt like a courtroom. James Sr. sat at what was no longer the head of the table, but the defendant's chair. Kesha entered precisely on time, flanked by attorneys and a restructuring specialist. The mahogany walls seemed to lean in as she took the seat directly opposite James. Old power versus new. The votes came swiftly. Victoria's suspension as CEO approved 6-2. Marcus Jr.'s removal as COO unanimous. Outside, the Whitmore Towers logo still gleamed in the morning sun, but inside, the message was clear. The reign was over. The boardroom air was thick with finality, as Catherine's resignation from the foundation was accepted without debate, just a curt nod from board member Harrison Pierce. Kesha's reforms rolled out with military precision. Immediate actions. The $50 million Minority Business Fund went live in 72 hours, Washington Capital seeding it, while Whitmore Industries matched over 3 years of financial penance. Victoria began mandatory sensitivity training, Wednesday 40 hours of Harvard-designed coursework, plus psychological evaluation. Corporate rehab for the privileged. Marcus Jr.'s LinkedIn now bore a scarlet letter. Currently in leadership rehabilitation, following documented discriminatory conduct. His social media access was revoked indefinitely. James Sr. kept his board seat but lost voting rights for 6 months. His public apology video, scripted by Crisis PR, delivered through gritted teeth, racked up 12 million views in a day. The comments section became a battleground between advocates for accountability and apologists for privilege. Systemic overhaul. The Dignity Protocol rewrote corporate DNA, mandatory inclusive leadership training, unconscious bias workshops, and anonymous reporting channels. A public diversity dashboard exposed hiring promotion metrics quarterly, an unprecedented transparency move that sent competitors scrambling. The new mission statement etched into every office wall, building partnerships that honor human dignity, promote equity, and create value for all. Cultural reckoning. The viral Instagram footage, now at 2.8 M views, became required viewing at Harvard and Wharton, a case study in how not to handle privilege meeting reality. Marcus Jr.'s meltdown inspired a documentary series, When the Mask Slips, examining social media's role in corporate accountability. Leadership transition. Kesha declined the CEO role, instead installing Dr. Patricia Williams, a black woman with Ivy League credentials and a reputation for turning toxic cultures around. Dr. Williams launched a 12-state listening tour, sitting in factory break rooms and minority-owned businesses alike. As the new team took the helm, analysts noted something curious. Whitmore Industries stock, after its initial crash, began climbing again. Turns out, doing the right thing was also good for business. The Whitmore name remained on the building. But the empire, that belonged to history. The financial markets told the story first. Whitmore Industries stock plummeted 23% in the immediate aftermath, but within 6 weeks, it not only recovered, it surged. ESG funds poured in, betting on the long-term value of a company willing to gut its own rot. The canceled Meridian deal was replaced by something revolutionary, a consortium of minority-owned suppliers that boosted efficiency by 8%, while creating twice as many jobs. It became a Harvard Business School case study overnight. Kesha's influence rippled far beyond Whitmore. A dozen other Washington Capital portfolio companies adopted the Dignity Protocol within months. The data proved undeniable. Companies with inclusive leadership saw 19% higher revenue growth and 23% better employee retention. Wall Street took notice. The personal reckonings. Victoria's 3-month corporate rehab stripped her of every excuse. Psychological evaluations revealed unconscious biases that had shaped hiring promotions and partnerships for years. 6 months later, she sat for a tell-all interview. I thought success meant I could decide who belonged. I was wrong. Catherine traded gala committees for community centers, redirecting the foundation toward black women entrepreneurs. The pearls she'd clutched in panic now adorned her at HBCU partnership signings. Marcus Jr. shocked everyone. His Instagram, once a shrine to privilege, became a platform amplifying Black entrepreneurs. When critics called it performative, he silenced them by donating half his trust fund to minority business incubators. The ripple effect. The Whitmore Standard entered the corporate lexicon a blueprint for turning scandal into systemic change. Senator Elizabeth Warren cited it during banking committee hearings. The National Association of Black Businesses awarded Whitmore its highest honor 18 months later. James Sr. stood on that award stage, but it was Kesha who brought the audience to their feet with her keynote. Real change happens when we choose growth over grievance, accountability over excuses, and humanity over hierarchy. As the 4-minute applause echoed through the ballroom, the Whitmore family finally understood their name hadn't been destroyed that night at the gala. It had been redeemed. The new Whitmore Industries. Victoria sat in the audience of the UN Global Compact Assembly, flanked by her new leadership team, 3 HBCU graduates, 2 Latino department heads, and an indigenous supply chain director. The company she once ran on instinct and privilege now thrived on data and diversity. Kesha had never needed to execute the hostile takeover. The mere threat of it had achieved what decades of voluntary diversity initiatives couldn't real change. Her 34.7% stake became a partnership model with Washington Capital and Whitmore, co-creating supplier diversity programs that Fortune 500 companies rushed to replicate. A new bottom line. Quarterly reports now ranked diversity metrics alongside revenue. Employee satisfaction scores weighed equally with profit margins. The infamous Meridian Club Penthouse hosted monthly dignity dialogues, raw conversations between executives and frontline workers. The results. By year 2, Whitmore Industries shattered records: 31% surge in employee satisfaction, 27% boost in customer loyalty, 19% revenue growth, 0 discrimination complaints. The company that nearly collapsed from casual racism became proof that accountability drives profit. Kesha's investment yielded a 34% return not just financially, but in lives changed and potential unlocked. Global impact. 2 years later, Kesha stood before the UN, her voice echoing through the assembly hall. Power isn't about destruction, it's about what you build. The Whitmore case study, now taught at Harvard-Oxford, and INSEAD, proved that. 1. Strategic thinking, emotional reaction. 2. Accountability, yonder value creation. 3. Dignity, sacre, profitability. The ripple effect became a tidal wave. The Corporate Dignity Alliance, born from that fateful Manhattan evening, now included 847 companies worldwide, all because one Black woman refused to let racism be the end of a story. The marble floors of the Meridian Club still gleamed, but now they reflected something new, a world where justice and success weren't opposites, but partners. The Corporate Dignity Movement. 12 million employees now worked under companies embracing the Alliance's principles, proof that what began as one confrontation had rewritten corporate America's playbook. Victoria Whitmore, once the epitome of Park Avenue privilege, now sat on the Alliance's advisory board. Her transformation from tone-deaf CEO to inclusive leader studied in MBA programs nationwide. She carried that gala night not as shame, but as sacred responsibility. Personal redemptions. Marcus Jr.'s Privilege Check podcast hit 2.8 million monthly listeners with his viral episode, "The Night I Learned I Wasn't the Main Character," becoming required listening for Fortune 500 executives. Catherine's Pearl Initiative funded 200 Black women entrepreneurs. Annually, her once exclusionary necklace now symbolized access. The program's 94% success rate made it a Goldman Sachs case study. Kesha's legacy. Her dignity-driven capitalism philosophy now guided $340 billion in assets. That night at the Meridian Club proved her core belief: strategic intelligence outlasts viral outrage. She hadn't destroyed the Whitmores, she'd given them something far more valuable, a chance to evolve. The quarterly report that changed business. Whitmore Industries' dual-pillar reports Financials on one page, dignity metrics on the other, became industry standard. Their 87% supplier diversity rate and zero discrimination lawsuits proved inclusion wasn't just moral, it was profitable. Final reflection. As Kesha's steel watch ticked onward, it no longer counted down to ruin-it-marked moments where courage met strategy. This wasn't just a story about racism exposed. It was about the power of preparation over performative outrage, the ROI of redemption. How one black woman's brilliance turned a viral moment into systemic change, real transformation. Kesha often said, happens when we stop asking, who's to blame, and start asking, what can we build? Your turn. Have you witnessed a Whitmore moment in your workplace? How might strategic thinking transform it? Share below, then pass this story to someone who needs to see what happens when dignity meets determination.